Ladies and gentlemen, I have another glass of my Jones Special Release Nuke Cola Victory here. And I'm going to see how it pairs with vodka. Unfortunately, this is the one I used to take a picture of my review. So it does need to be mixed. I prefer to gravity mix, which is why I tend to angry pour things, but yeah. And I'm going to talk about a certain phrase that comes up in life every now and again, which is, why don't you just? Somebody said to me recently when I mentioned that my house needs $100,000 worth of repairs, because, they asked, like, why do you work so much? You have two jobs, you're trying to work every day, you're always pushing the hours, like you've got one job, it pays okay, why don't you just... And I was like, my house needs $100,000 worth of repairs. It basically needs to be completely redone. And, so this person says to me, why don't you just move? It's like, you don't seem to understand. I have a problem, and solving that problem is ideal. Like, I can get by without the $100,000 worth of repairs. Maybe for another 10 years. Maybe for another 20 years. If I don't want to have company over, I never have to get them all done. It's the simple fact that, I would have to completely gut my home and rebuild the whole thing if I wanted to be comfortable. And even then, the truth is, I don't want to gut my home and rebuild the whole thing for me to even live in. What I really want to do is, put my brother in here. Have a security system so I can make sure he doesn't do something weird like molest a kid. And, hire someone to look after him because he needs it. I am not digging this straw. Anyway. But the thing about that is that statement, why don't you just? Does anything intelligent ever come after that? When I was a kid, I remember my old man bought a used car for $9,000. And my aunt said, why don't you just buy a new car for $10,000? And he said, well, because I've seen what you get for a new $10,000 car, and it's crap. It's tiny, it's too small for my needs. I can afford $9,000 for a good used car. Why would I buy anything cheaper than that? This is the car I want. Why would I not buy this car? And it's like, yes, there's another alternative. It's just a stupid one. I remember there was one time I was talking about my webcomic, and I have a webcomic, and, I haven't posted in a while for a number of reasons, one being I was always behind. I started the comic behind, and I never did wind up catching up. I'm years behind. I have all these episodes I've written, and the device they're on is not working, so I have to send it to a data recovery, which is going to cost like $100 or $1,000, and it's all this stuff. And I remember I told this to somebody and said, well, why don't you just write 10 or draw 10 comics a day? And I go, I can't draw 10 comics a day they're not easy to draw. How would I draw 10 a day? It's not like it takes 15 minutes to draw a comic. I used to do a comic a night, and it would take me 4 hours. Now, I grant that maybe I could cut some corners. I could do them exclusively in black and white and not color. I could maybe make them a lot simpler and all of those things. But even then, sustaining 10 a day, unless they're stick figures, would be damn near impossible. It's just, why don't you just? Because that's not possible. Like, why don't I just stop slurping when I drink? I really need to work on that. The same person that told me, why don't you just move, also said, if you're looking to promote your YouTube channel, why don't you just go on Instagram and find celebrities and ask them if you could pay them to share your work? And the answer is, I tried that. And, you spend hours looking for the right person, then you message them and you never hear back. These people won't even take my money. I've done that. I've gone to YouTubers. There was a YouTuber, he's kind of become a meme. His guy was named Boogie2988. And I said, how much would it be for you to promote for me to sponsor one of your videos? And, he basically ignores me. And then he makes a video about how he vets the people that sponsor his videos to such a high degree, basically answering me with, your work's not good enough. But I never sent him a link to my work, so he doesn't know what my work looks like. That's number one. And number two, bro, you were sponsored by Loot Crate. Loot Crate, worthless crap I'm going to send you every month so that you can have a copious amount of crap. Not a lot of vetting going on there. So, yeah, it's this, why don't you just? Why don't you just? And whenever somebody says, why don't you just, it's because they either don't understand or they don't want to deal with you. That's kind of that thing. I remember I told a friend of mine, I said, I want to be the kind of person who could have season tickets to the Amundsen, which is a big theater in Los Angeles. It's as prestigious. I mean, I don't know how much season tickets are. I would imagine they're more than $1,000. But, the thing about having tickets to the Amundsen is that I don't think they have shows every day. I haven't looked it up, but I don't think they have shows every day. And even then, I cannot donate a week of my life or one day out of my week to go to the Amundsen. I work too much. I'd be too tired. Last time I went to the Pantages and I fell asleep because I was so goddamn tired. But, it's just one of those things. As he starts trying to calculate how much money I'd need to save, and I'm going, look, you don't understand. I don't want to have season tickets to the Amundsen. I want to be the kind of person that can say, I'm going to buy these $2,000 tickets just for the F of it. I'm not trying to make this work. I'm trying to get to here. It's like if what you really want is an In-N-Out 4x4, you need to go to In-N-Out for it. You can go to McDonald's and you can order a cheeseburger with 4 patties and 4 pieces of cheese. It's not a 4x4. I mean, you could go out there and get a two double quarter pounders, toss out the bun off one of them, and make yourself a pounder. Okay? So 4 pieces of meat, 4 pieces of cheese, but it's not an In-N-Out 4x4. It's a pounder, and you're as close as you can come at McDonald's, but it's a why don't you just? It's not a solution. Got something in my beard here. Something's itchy. Anyway, so that's one of those things. You know, I had a guy says, "Well, why don't you just get rid of your house? You can't support the house. Why are you living there?" It's like, because I live in Los Angeles. Rents are terrible. I would be paying $1,500 minimum, absolute minimum, right now. I mean, you cannot find an apartment for $1,500 but a month. But, you know, like, if I got that apartment, I'd need a roommate to split the rent. And, you know, it's like there's all these bills. And, you know, it's like, yeah, my house is paid off. I don't have a mortgage. So it's basically, yeah, I make enough money to kind of stay where, bad fly. I make enough money to stay where I am, but I don't make enough money to progress. And even now with the bad economy, you know, the way things are right now, I might not be able to do that. The average American has $500 in their savings account for emergencies. That's not how the world works. $500 just isn't enough. And you know, it's like, I don't know what this person's situation was, but they don't need money. I can tell you that. I mean, like, their car ain't working and they're not bothering to get it fixed. But they don't need, I mean, like, they're not going to lose their housing. I mean, I guess they're staying with family or something like that. But that's that thing. You get people who just don't understand. It's like, no, we need to make this happen, not make this work. And that's one of those problems. It's like, why don't you just do this? Why don't you just do that? You know, I had a friend who used to call me an annoying nickname. And I put up with it. Because I put up with it, he wouldn't stop. Then he wanted to drive my car. And he wouldn't leave me alone until he drove my car. So I let him drive my car once. Once I let him drive my car, he wouldn't stop demanding to drive my car. No matter what I said, no matter what I did, he thought once I crossed that threshold, I've crossed that threshold, I should be able to do that. Okay, and I mean, the last time I saw him, he demanded we play pool. I don't like playing pool. I had that was all the free time I had for the week. I had work, I had school, I was in college. And it's like, why don't you just play pool with him? Well, because when I play pool with him, it doesn't satiate him. He wants to play more pool. Dude was going to keep me out there till, you know, the pool hall closed. And, you know, then I had school the next morning. I could tell you, I had already been up for 24 hours. I was exhausted. And I was giving up free time to be with him. The next week, instead of going to see him, I stayed home. He didn't call me, didn't say, hey, where are you? He was just fine with that. So instead of going and spending time with him, I went to sleep. I think I slept for 12 hours before school the next day. And I felt so much better. But in the world of why don't you just, if you're asking why don't you just, you probably already know that the answer is because that's a dumb idea. But then, maybe the reason you're saying, why don't you just, is because you're sick of hearing it. I don't know. Anyway, my thoughts. I'm Richard.
Background courtesy of Photographs of a Mad Richard. Link in the description.
Who should be commenting, liking, and subscribing? You should be commenting, liking, and subscribing. Danger Ducky says, if not you, then who?